And my final question is, we love your friendship. Obviously, we're Hello Magazine with Meghan Markle. You guys go way back. We would love to know, what is an unexpected characteristic about her that you absolutely adore?
I don't think anything is unexpected because she's just so glaringly glorious, you know? So I think she wears it on her sleeve, and she's honestly been one of the best friends in this life I could have asked for. So she is as wonderful and amazing and delightful as she seems. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, after hearing that clip, I have just one question. How many times does Abigail Spencer need to say the same thing before certain corners of the media finally accept the answer? Seriously, at this point, interviewing Abigail Spencer has become one of the most predictable events in celebrity journalism. You could set your watch by it. Abigail could be promoting a new project, celebrating a career milestone, walking a red carpet, or discussing literally anything else, and somehow the conversation always circles back to one person, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. And yet, every single time, Abigail answers with the same warmth, the same admiration, and the same unwavering support. Not because she has to, not because she is reading from a script, not because she is trying to sell something, but because she's talking about a friend, a real friend, the kind that most people are lucky to have once in a lifetime, and the kind that when you do have one, you speak about with exactly the tone Abigail consistently uses. And that is what makes this latest interview so genuinely fascinating. Because the answer Abigail gave wasn't dramatic, it wasn't controversial, it wasn't designed to generate headlines or spark a news cycle. In fact, it was remarkably, almost stubbornly, simple. When asked about an unexpected characteristic she adores about Meghan, Abigail essentially said there isn't one. Think about that for a moment. Really sit with it. In a celebrity culture that is almost entirely obsessed with hidden secrets, shocking revelations, and behind-the-scenes drama, Abigail's response was the complete opposite of what gossip culture craves and what clickbait culture rewards. She basically said Meghan is exactly who she appears to be. No secret villain lurking behind closed doors, no hidden diva waiting to emerge when the cameras turn off, no dramatic double life carefully concealed from the public, no dramatic revelation waiting to be uncovered by some intrepid journalist willing to ask the right question at the right moment. Just the same person in private that people see in public. Consistent, authentic, real. And perhaps that is precisely why her answer carries so much weight. Because Abigail isn't someone who met Meghan once at a charity gala and walked away with a pleasant impression. She isn't a casual acquaintance who bumped into her at an industry event and exchanged pleasantries over a glass of champagne. She isn't somebody commenting from a safe and comfortable distance, filling airtime with secondhand impressions and politely worded opinions. This is a woman who has known Meghan for years, long before royal titles, long before palace intrigue, long before endless tabloid coverage transformed every public appearance into a geopolitical event. Their friendship goes back to a very different chapter of Meghan's life, a chapter that often gets forgotten or deliberately overlooked whenever people try to reduce Meghan's story to a neat collection of post-2017 headlines. The reality is that Meghan had a full life before she became one of the most talked about women on the planet. She had a career she had worked hard to build. She had friendships she had invested years of time and energy into. She had ambitions, a sense of purpose, a perspective on the world, and meaningful relationships that existed and thrived entirely independently of any royal connection. And Abigail Spencer has been there for much of that journey. That matters enormously because genuine friendship isn't forged in convenience. It's forged in time, in shared experience, in showing up when it isn't easy, when it isn't glamorous, and when it isn't strategically beneficial. Anyone can stand beside you when life is going smoothly. Anyone can show up when things are convenient, when your name opens doors and your company comes with social benefits. The real test of a friendship comes when the spotlight gets uncomfortably brighter, when criticism grows louder and begins to echo across international news cycles, when controversy follows every move and every word is picked apart for hidden meaning, when supporting someone publicly suddenly becomes unpopular in certain very vocal circles, when lending your name to someone else's story carries real professional and personal risk. That is when you discover who your real friends actually are. And Abigail Spencer has consistently, repeatedly, and without apparent hesitation demonstrated exactly what real friendship looks like. Not in the abstract, not in theory, but in practice, in public, in interview after interview, year after year. Notice something important about how she speaks. She didn't hesitate when asked. No careful calculation of political risk playing out visibly behind the eyes. No attempt to find language safe enough to avoid generating controversy while still technically answering the question. Instead, she immediately described Meghan as glaringly glorious. That's not the language of obligation. That's not the language of someone fulfilling a social contract or honoring a commitment to be publicly supportive. That's the language of genuine affection. That's somebody speaking from a place of real, heartfelt admiration for another human being. And honestly, the phrase itself is kind of perfect for reasons that extend beyond the friendship it describes. Because one thing absolutely nobody can honestly deny is that Meghan has a presence, an undeniable, magnetic, almost gravitational presence. She attracts attention. She sparks conversation. She commands headlines. She dominates media cycles in ways that most public figures spend entire careers trying and failing to replicate. Years after stepping away from frontline royal duties, she remains one of the most discussed, most searched, most written about public figures in the entire world. Entire news cycles still revolve around her decisions. Entire television segments are still devoted to analyzing her choices. Entire online communities exist for the sole purpose of either celebrating or criticizing her, sometimes doing both simultaneously and with equal intensity. People who claim they are genuinely tired of talking about Meghan somehow continue to talk about Meghan every single day. They write articles about being tired of her. They appear on panels to discuss their exhaustion with covering her. They produce content lamenting the amount of content being produced about her. It is one of the more bewildering and quietly hilarious paradoxes of modern media. If Meghan truly wasn't relevant, if she truly wasn't generating interest, if audiences truly didn't care, then why is everyone still discussing her? Why are magazines still asking her friends about her? Why are interviews still including questions about her years after the initial wave of royal coverage should have subsided? Why do headlines continue generating enormous engagement whenever her name appears? The answer is obvious to anyone willing to look at it plainly. Meghan remains a genuine cultural force, not manufactured, not artificially sustained, real. And Abigail's repeated, consistent, freely given comments serve as a quiet but persistent reminder of that reality. But let's talk about something even more significant than media dynamics or cultural relevance. Let's talk about the friendship itself. One of the most consistent themes that emerges whenever people who actually know Meghan choose to speak publicly is a quality that doesn't generate as many clicks as scandal, but is arguably far more revealing: consistency. The stories rarely change. The descriptions offered by different people across different years and different contexts rarely diverge in meaningful ways. The affection rarely wavers. Again and again, people who know Meghan personally, people who have known her across different seasons of her life and career, describe her as thoughtful, generous, supportive, hardworking, loyal, present, the kind of person who remembers the details, who follows up, who checks in, who shows up in the private moments that nobody outside the relationship ever sees or hears about. Because this isn't the first time she has spoken warmly and positively about Meghan. It isn't the second time. It isn't even the fifth or sixth time. At this point, the count has become almost academic. Every time the subject arises, in whatever context, in whatever interview, on whatever platform, Abigail says something kind and specific and genuine sounding. Every single time. Think about how genuinely unusual that actually is in the ecosystem of celebrity friendships. Most celebrity friendships are, by nature and by the structural pressures of that world, somewhat transactional and frequently temporary. Hollywood friendships carry a particular reputation for impermanence. People move on when their careers take them in different directions. Lives change, priorities shift. The social geography of fame is constantly reshaping itself, and relationships that looked solid can dissolve remarkably quickly when the circumstances that created them stop applying. Yet this friendship has not only endured, it appears to have deepened. That is worth paying genuine attention to. Because real friendship, the durable kind that survives fame and distance and public controversy and the relentless pressure of living your life in a fishbowl, isn't measured in Instagram posts or carefully orchestrated public appearances. It's not measured in the frequency of joint red carpet appearances or the number of times someone appears in a social media caption. It's measured in loyalty. It's measured in consistency. It's measured in the willingness to show up again and again, publicly and privately, even when doing so attracts unwanted attention or comment. And from everything we have seen and heard over the years, Abigail Spencer has consistently, repeatedly, and without apparent sign of fatigue, shown up for Meghan. The media spends what feels like a disproportionate amount of energy analyzing Meghan's every move, what she wears and what the choice of outfits supposedly signals, what she says and what the phrasing supposedly reveals, what she posts and what the timing supposedly means, what she attends and what the attendance supposedly communicates, what she doesn't attend and what the absence supposedly implies. It is almost like watching people attempt to solve an elaborate mystery, layering interpretation upon interpretation, when the subject of the mystery keeps providing the same straightforward answer and finding it consistently ignored in favor of more exciting, more complicated, and more financially rewarding narratives. Meanwhile, the people who actually know Meghan, the ones with genuine first-hand experience, keep offering the same uncomplicated perspective. She's a good friend. She's supportive. She's caring. She is, as Abigail put it, exactly who she appears to be. Yet somehow that direct, simple, first-hand explanation never seems to generate the same sustained interest as whatever complicated counter-narrative happens to be trending in a given news cycle. Humans are fascinating creatures in this regard. Presented with a simple, credible answer, we often prefer a complicated, speculative one. Presented with years of consistent evidence, we often reach past it toward rumor and innuendo. Presented with sustained friendship as the most obvious explanation for someone's character, we sometimes prefer anonymous sources and dramatic claims. And yet, friendships like this continue to speak for themselves, quietly and persistently across the years. One thing I found particularly interesting about Abigail's specific response in this most recent interview was how deeply personal it felt. She didn't discuss Meghan as a public figure navigating global attention. She didn't reach for the language of brands or business or celebrity management. She didn't frame her answer in terms of public perception or strategic positioning. She talked about friendship. Specifically and sincerely, she said Meghan has been one of the best friends she could have asked for. Not one of the most famous friends, not one of the most strategically useful connections, one of the best friends. That statement, stripped of all the surrounding noise, tells us something important. Because being a good friend isn't about showing up for the public moments, it's about the private ones. It's about the phone calls nobody sees and nobody ever hears about. It's about the kind of support that never becomes a headline because it was never intended to be public in the first place. It's about kindness that exists purely for its own sake. It's about being genuinely present during difficult times when presence matters most and visibility matters least. The public sees a tiny fraction of any human relationship. Friends see the rest. And according to Abigail, what she has seen across the years is someone wonderful, someone amazing, someone delightful. Those weren't offhand words selected for politeness. They were deliberate. They reflected years of accumulated experience, years of shared memories, years of built trust, years of navigating the extraordinary together while remaining at the core of it two people who simply value each other. There is also something quietly refreshing seeing a genuine, uncomplicated friendship celebrated in a media landscape that often thrives on its opposite. Disagreements generate clicks, drama generates engagement, conflict generates headlines and extended coverage and follow-up pieces. Friendship, by contrast, doesn't generate nearly as much commercially useful noise. It is not inherently contentious. It does not demand ongoing coverage or produce escalating revelations. Yet, here we are, discussing an interview that is fundamentally about loyalty, about appreciation, about one woman expressing for what feels like the 100th time, and with the same evident sincerity as the first, her gratitude for another woman's presence in her life. Perhaps that is part of why the clip resonates beyond the usual circles, because beneath all the celebrity fascination, beneath the ongoing media narratives and the tribal online debates, it reminds people of something entirely universal. Everyone values loyal friends. Everyone understands at a bone-deep level the importance of having someone genuinely in your corner. Not strategically, not conditionally, not only when it's easy or popular or professionally advantageous. Just there, consistently, reliably, genuinely there. And Abigail Spencer clearly, evidently, and repeatedly feels that Meghan has been exactly that person for her. Which brings us finally back to the question nobody seems willing to stop asking. Why do reporters keep returning to this topic? Why does virtually every interview with Abigail Spencer eventually circle back to the same subject? The answer is as simple as it is commercially logical. Because Meghan continues to matter, and interest in her hasn't dimmed in the way that media interest in most public figures eventually dims. If there were no genuine audience curiosity, the questions would stop. If readers and viewers didn't care, editors wouldn't commission the stories and producers wouldn't include the questions. But they haven't stopped. Years later, Meghan remains one of the most genuinely fascinating figures in global popular culture, attracting attention across continents and demographics in ways that continue to surprise even the people paid to track and predict such things. Which means that every time Abigail Spencer is asked, and every time she answers with the same warmth and the same specificity and the same evident lack of strategic calculation, she adds another piece of evidence to a pattern that has been building for years. Not a pattern of controversy, not a pattern of scandal or hidden darkness finally coming to light, a pattern of friendship, a pattern of respect, a pattern of genuine human admiration expressed by someone with no obvious incentive to keep expressing it, except that it happens, apparently, to be true. At the end of the day, headlines come and go. Narratives are constructed and then deconstructed and then reconstructed. Public debates evolve and mutate and eventually redirect themselves toward new subjects and new controversies. But genuine friendships, the ones that survive time and pressure and public scrutiny, often reveal more about a person's actual character than any headline, any anonymous source, or any carefully engineered media narrative ever could. And if Abigail Spencer's words are anything to go by, her verdict on Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, has remained remarkably, almost defiantly, consistent. After all these years, after all the headlines, after all the scrutiny, after all the noise, the message remains exactly the same. She's a wonderful friend. And honestly, after hearing Abigail say it for what feels like the 100th time, with the same ease and warmth as the very first time, perhaps the most surprising thing isn't what she said. It's that people keep asking the question as though they're still expecting a different answer. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Have a blessed week.